This makeup look is one of my favorites, mostly because I felt so unwell at the time, but I still ended up looking glam at the end, and that is because this look is super easy to create. And I will go through it step by step, from my tips on foundation shades, mixing tones and textures, and creating that perfect smudged out eyeliner. So let's get started. Now, not to play into that 90s movie trope where I'm going to take off my glasses before we get started, I only wear these for focusing my camera and for driving as well. To start, I'm going to apply one of my favorite primers, and this is the Flormar one. It is very hydrating and amazing under your makeup. It's somewhere between a hydrating mist and a moisturizer. If those two had a baby, you would get this primer. Now, this primer is also available in a radiance primer, which is beautiful, but it's very shimmery and just a little bit too much for me. My pores cannot take it. So I like to start off with a hydrating primer and then use a liquid highlighter where I want it. And I love when a brand comes out with a highlighter in both a liquid and a powder form. I'm just going to focus this where I don't have any skin issues. And I like to call this the C shape. So it's around the eyes, starting at the cheeks, up into the temples, and then a little bit on the forehead. Now we're going to leave this on the skin and we're going to move on to foundation. One of my favorite makeup tips is once you find a foundation that you love, try getting it in a shade one shade darker and one shade lighter. This will mean that you can customize it throughout the year, add a little bit of the dark, add a little bit of the light depending on how your skin changes, but also you can use it for contouring and highlighting. It's actually a tip that I have from my makeup artist days. We don't buy every single shade, we actually jump them and then we mix them. Now I like to sweep this across the face using a flat brush and then finish off with a damp sponge. This will just give you a little bit more coverage. Now, if you want a sheerer coverage, use your sponge to apply it. By applying a small amount on the face to begin with, it just means that the sponge doesn't have as much product to move around, meaning it won't sheer it out as much. And try using room temperature water when you're dampening your sponge. Think of the Goldilocks scenario. So you don't want it to be too warm because this will melt the foundation, and then as you're blending, it kind of sinks into your pores, but also very cold can kind of shock the skin and do exactly the same thing. So try to make sure you're using room temperature, skin temperature water when you're dampening your sponge. Now I'm going to apply the darker shade of foundation to contour the outer ring of my face and the lighter shade of the foundation on the inner ring of my face. And then simply blend it out with the same sponge, but I like to start off with the lighter shade, blend that out, and then switch to the darker shade. Now, I don't bake very often, but I'm going to bake today. Typically, I like to microwave, which is using a lighter shade of pressed powder instead of that loose powder applied very, very heavily. Now, it is great for catching any fallout underneath the eyes, but it isn't something that I would recommend for everybody, particularly for the more mature skins. Because I have dry eyelids, I can get away with using a full coverage concealer on my lids instead of using a primer. A lot of eyeshadow primers are actually too heavy for me because my skin is too sheer and also too dry. For eyeshadow, we're going to be using a very natural palette. You need to start off with a shade at least one shade lighter, or if not matching your own skin tone. You're going to apply this onto the lid and then just sweep this across and apply this with a flat brush or your fingertips for maximum coverage. Now the next shade is very similar to your bronzer tone. So you want to apply this with your fluffy brush, keep your eyes open, and you're basically going to create this little V shape or a wedge shape on the outer edge of the eye, working into that outer third and then bringing it down onto the lid. Now for shimmer, I'm going to be using this pinky cool tone. We're going to focus this on the inner corner of the eye. Now, if you're not a fan of cool tones on your skin tone, try using more of a neutral tone instead. But don't worry, because what we're actually going to be doing is adding in a neutral tone after we apply this. This is a great way to melt a warm and a cooler tone together. To add a little bit more depth, we're going to apply a darker shade. This time we're going to be a little bit more precise, but we're not going to pick up too much product. We're going to keep it nice and soft, but also we don't want to overblend. Now this is something that I rarely do, but I'm going to be applying eyeliner and winging it out. But I'm going to be using a liquid liner as my guide. And then what I like to do is go over that with a pencil liner. This is going to create that smudge effect. And as you blend the two of them together and create those layers, it creates that smudgy finish. But before I apply that pencil, I'm going to leave that liquid set and apply a brighter shade on my waterline. And then I'm going to switch to a black pencil liner. Now pencil liners are easier to smudge as long as you work quickly. Unlike liquid that sits on the skin and really holds against it, a pencil liner sits onto the skin with more of a waxy finish, meaning that you can smudge it just that little bit more. You want to use a very short, dense brush when you're pressing over the top of this, but just watch for your pressure. If you press too much, you're actually going to lift the liquid underneath, which we really don't want. Now I'm moving back onto the face just for a second. We're going to sweep off that powder underneath the eyes, and this means that we can now access the lower lash line. We're going to take that pencil liner again and smudge this underneath the eyes. I know a lot of people like using liquid liner underneath the eyes. I'm not a big fan of it. I like the softness that you get from a pencil. And you're going to be focusing this on the outer third to outer half of the lower lash line and bringing it up to match the outer edge into that wing. Go ahead and apply some mascara and some lashes. Now to cool down the cheeks a little bit, I'm going to add a slightly purple tone. Because everything that we've been working on the eyes has had that mixture of cool and warmth, we're going to be doing the same thing on my cheeks. Now I don't typically do this because it can look a little bit too harsh. I typically only use a purple tone when I'm in my wintry pale skin phase. But what I'm going to do is then blend over the top of this using a slightly warmer bronzer, and this is just going to bring the entire look together. Yes, it looks a little bit harsh, but I kind of like that. It's kind of bold. Finish off with a powder highlighter that matches the same shape that you applied with the liquid one. Now we're going to skip blush for this look. I want those bronzy tones on the cheeks. So let's just apply our lipstick. We're going to start off with a deep neutral brown tone and then a cool toned lipstick. This is just going to work really nice with the face and the eyes because we have a mixture of cool and warm working throughout the entire face. And then to finish the lips, use a balm instead of a gloss. And there you go. That is the finished look. And as always, my friends, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and I'll see you in the next one.